Hello, captains, and welcome on board the Bridge of the Enterprise NCC 1701D. My name is Brent Justice. Welcome to my channel. This video today is going to be just a thoughts video. This is me, non-scripted, brainstorming my thoughts of Star Trek, the Star Trek franchise, the upcoming Picard series, Discovery series, even Star Trek Online, the game. I'm just going to chit-chat with you all and tell you my thoughts as a fan of Star Trek my entire life. I am a big player of the game Star Trek Online. I have another channel called Just Gaming for Us, where I play the game Star Trek Online, do lots and lots of videos, got thousands of videos on that game there. So you can check that out. This is that game. I am inside that game right now. I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise and can walk around. It's a fully interactive game and all that. Great game, good space ground combat, love it. And I'm just here as a platform to give you something to look at while I chat about the Star Trek franchise. There won't be any B-roll here or anything fancy, so I will not be moving on the screen much, just talking. So you're welcome to listen to this video without actually looking at it, if you would like. Okay, so I guess before I talk about the Star Trek franchise, and people want to know what I think about the upcoming Picard series and all this, what my thoughts are, because I have been meaning to review episodes of the new Star Trek, of Discovery, of the Star Trek shorts, of the Picard series, trailers, all those things. I have done a review of like one of the Picard trailers on this channel, and I had intended to do all of them, really, but I never got the time to do it. I'm very busy on my daily job, and I just have not had the time to put together those videos, which do take a lot of time to edit. And so that's why I'm bringing you this video today, because I haven't actually talked to you about my thoughts on Star Trek, and I want to put them out there, just like everybody else is going to be doing. I want to put my thoughts out there and what I think. Before I do that, let me give you just a little bit of background. You're welcome to skip through this to where I start talking about, current things, but stick with it. Let me just tell you a little bit of history about my fandom as a Star Trek fan. That way you understand where I'm coming from. I've been a fan since my single digits of Star Trek. I used to stay at a friend's house after school, and his father had all of TOS on VHS at the time. Yes, VHS was my thing in the past. Single digits, VHS. I sat down after school and watched all the TOS episodes. Everyone loved it. So I started with the very first series. Of course, this was way after it had already aired. This was in the mid-'80s. So, but I saw it all on VHS. And then TNG came on TV, and I was still young, but I watched it. And of course, as I grew up, I kind of grew up with TNG. So that's my show. That's my Star Trek. And of course, as I got older, I've watched it and rewatched it a million times. I've seen every episode multiple times. Then DS9 came on, and I remember sitting down and watching that when it first aired on TV. Very big thing, because now they're moving off a starship and they're going, into a space station. But I watched it. I watched all of DS9 on TV. And then Voyager. All of Voyager. And I love Voyager. I'm not one of those Voyager haters. I absolutely love Voyager. I would say it's competing between TNG and Voyager for me. One of those is, I guess TNG is probably a little bit better for me, since that was my first Trek, really. But, excuse me. But Voyager is like really good. It's like advanced Trek. It's like, as TV filming got better, like now they can do better special effects, and they can do more interesting things. And Voyager was just really interesting for me. I love Voyager. And then Enterprise. It came on the screen, and I watched all of that too. Okay? Then I have watched the J.J. Abrams movies. Every single J.J. Abrams movie for Star Trek. Then I watched Discovery. I've seen the 2 Discovery seasons. I have watched the short treks for Discovery. I have watched the trailers for Picard. The only thing in Star Trek that I really haven't watched is the animated series, TAS, the animated series. I have not seen that. So that's the one set that I'm missing. However, I have also read a lot of Star Trek books. When I was young and in school, I would use my spare time and read Star Trek novels. So I read a lot of Star Trek books too. Way back in the TNG days, TNG and DS9 days. So I am very familiar with Star Trek. I'm coming at this as an educated fan. Oh, I've also been to a lot of conventions. Been to several Star Trek conventions. Met a few of the Star Trek actors. Been to their panels and listened to their Q&As. So I've been a fan since the single digits. I've lived it. I loved it. I'm a huge fan. And it's never going to stop for me. I'm always going to love the franchise, and I'm always going to follow the franchise because that's who I am and that's what I love. I have a passion for this. And then, of course, it shows in Star Trek Online. I've been playing Star Trek Online for 10 years. The game came out in 2010, but it was in beta in 2009. I've been playing it since beta, and it's now 2020. So I've been playing this game for 11 years. You have to understand. So I'm really into it. It's the WoW for me, you know, World of Warcraft. This is my World of Warcraft, Star Trek Online. So I've been playing it forever. So I'm a huge fan. So I just want you to know that history when I talk about these new things coming up. Okay. Now, one thing that people don't understand about Star Trek necessarily, if you didn't grow up during the time, is that this whole controversy with Discovery, Picard series, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek rebooting it and all this stuff is not necessarily new. A lot of people would say that the J.J. Abrams movies were the catalyst for them doing crazy wild Star Trek and just going off the rails with it. Honestly, that's not true. The first one that really kind of shook fans up was Enterprise. When that series came out, that shook the fans up. You need to keep in mind, Enterprise was not called Star Trek Enterprise when it first came out. No, it was just called Enterprise. Just Enterprise. They left the Star Trek out because they wanted it to be closer to general sci-fi. They wanted to bring in a wider audience. That was the first Star Trek where they were like, let's not cater to the fans. Let's try to bring a wider audience in. So they left out the Star Trek name thinking that it would be a little more appealing and somehow bring more people in. I don't know how that works, but that's what they did. And then they made a catchy pop song for the intro, cutting out the orchestral intros that we used to get. They changed up quite a bit of things on Enterprise. But through all the things that they changed up trying to get a wider audience, they still kept to the core visual of Star Trek, I should say. They kept to that core visual. Yes, it was a prequel, but it was a prequel that kind of made sense. They didn't use technology that looked like it was out of place for that time period. They didn't have tractor beams. They had grappler hooks. You know, the transporter was a brand new device that could scramble your system and trees and leaves end up inside of you, and it was only just then approved for biotransport. They mostly still use the shuttle. Technology, they had no shields. The ship had a polarized hull. They had no holographic communications. No crazy floating holograms all over the place. They use actual controls on the on their computer systems with actual buttons, just like TOS, just like the original Star Trek. They used actual push buttons and blinking lights. They kept the visual very Star Trek and very grounded in that time period. It did not feel like it was more advanced than the original series. And that can be shown in the episode where they bring in the Mirror Universe. Because when they did the Mirror Universe show, bringing in the Defiant that the Tholians had captured, it actually looked more advanced than Enterprise. When they put on those TOS uniforms and they redid the TOS bridge in those couple of episodes there for the Mirror Universe stuff, when they did all of that, it actually did look more futuristic than Enterprise. Somehow they made the original series, which came out in the 60s, with all that aesthetic, look more advanced than Enterprise, which is being now made, in the 2000s. And they did it. They succeeded with that visual. That shows to me and to everybody that they can do it. It can be done. You can take the original series and make it look very advanced and still have a prequel that looks not as advanced. Now, that's the problem, however, with Enterprise, is it was a prequel, and during this time period, prequels were a big thing, you have to understand. TV shows, movies, whatever. For some reason, this idea of doing prequels was was huge at the time and very popular. So Enterprise was a prequel because that was the popular thing to do at the time. In reality, they should not have messed with that with the past. And that is really the biggest problem I see with shows like Discovery or even the JJ movies, is that they are doing a time period in Star Trek that's already been done. You don't need to go back there. You don't need to do the original series time period. You don't need to do 10 years before the original series time period. That should be like sacred ground and just left alone. What should have happened is the next series after Enterprise, which is obviously Discovery now, should have been in the future beyond Star Trek Nemesis. If they had done a series that was in the future, then it would be okay. People would accept that. People would accept the jarring technology difference, the visual difference. People would be like, oh, okay, well, this is the future. A 26th century Star Trek would make more sense. People would buy that. But when you go back to the time period of TOS, the original series, you're messing with a time it's what I'm trying to say, a time capsule. It's like a time capsule. It's a period in time you just should not mess with. That aesthetic is unique to that time period. Now, it can be made to look modern with modern filming technology and all that. It can, but generally you should just leave it alone. And that's really the biggest problem I have with Discovery. It's in the wrong time period. They didn't need to do another prequel to TOS that is just a short, small 10 years before Kirk or whatever. That was unnecessary. That time period we don't need that. If anything, the only time period that could be done potentially well, I mean, if they do it well, would be something like the Romulan War. Right after the Federation gets founded, after Enterprise, the Romulan War starts developing, and you have this big, Federation Romulan War. It's like their first big war. That would be interesting to show on screen. That would make sense to revisit that kind of thing. But just to pick out a random time period like 10 years before Kirk where they did, and then totally radically visually change everything doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So people often ask, what do I think of Discovery? Well, Discovery, it works as a general sci-fi show. It's a good sci-fi show. It would also work as an alternate timeline show. If it is Star Trek in an alternate timeline, not our prime timeline, which CBS wants to keep shoving down our throat that it is, if it wasn't, and they just came out and say, okay, this is a totally different Star Trek, different timeline, whatever, I think people would accept it better. And I think it would actually be good on its own. I think it could be really good if it was separate from the prime Star Trek. But as it is, with them trying to shove it down our throat as Prime Trek, it doesn't fit. Visually, thematically, there's a lot of things happening that just doesn't feel like that time period of Star Trek to me. Now, they can fix that, and maybe they have by them going into the future here for this next season. Maybe that's the answer, and we just forget it all ever happened. Maybe somehow they radically change history, change the timeline, and somehow that all that stuff gets erased. I mean, that's what people are hoping for. I don't know if it'll happen, though, because they are really pushing the Discovery aesthetic. And I'm going to tell you where they're pushing it now. They're pushing it into Picard, and that's where it really, 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 with eggs on top and bacon, doesn't make any sense. We saw in, I'm just going to come out and hit the elephant in the room here, because I'm going to get right to it. In the Picard short, Children of Mars, we see that there are Discovery ships in dry dock at Utopia Planitia. We see a Discovery shuttle being used as a school bus on Earth. And this is Admiral Picard time period. This is after Nemesis, post Nemesis. Admiral Picard stuff time period. Right before the 25th century. Right before the 25th century. And we're seeing that. And we've never seen those kinds of things in any of TNG, Star Trek, or this time period, or even the time period before TNG. You know, where like the Enterprise C era, ships from that era. We've never seen like Discovery ships in that era. Why are there now Discovery ships all the way at the end of the 24th century? Now, people will argue and come up with some ideas to try to explain it. I don't believe them one bit. I don't believe those ideas. I don't think they make any sense. One of the ideas is that they're pulling Discovery ships out of mothballs to help move the Romulans, or they need transportation, so they're pulling old ships. Well, first of all, why would those ships still exist 150 years later? Why would there be Discovery style ships in mothballs to begin with? Those ships would have been destroyed or recycled by now. Their parts reused. They're totally old. They're even older than the TOS ships. You got to keep in mind there's a time period of the 23rd century we're missing here. The time from after Kirk came back, the 5-year mission, when the Enterprise was refitted to the Enterprise A. Then, of course, you had the Enterprise B and C. That whole time period in there, lots of new ships were built, more advanced ships that look nothing like the Discovery ships. And you have ships from that time period that still do exist in the late 24th century, but not Discovery ships. Those are way before the TOS ships. Those really should not exist. That would be like saying today we need to transport a bunch of people, overseas or something. So let's pull out some biplanes, some propeller-based biplanes from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and use those. Pull them out of mothballs and use them. Let's not do any of the planes from the 60s and 70s and 80s. No, let's go all the way back to the 40s and get some planes from there. That don't make no sense. So, like in the starships, if you were going to pull starships out of mothballs, the kind of ships you should be pulling out of mothballs would be TOS-style ships. Should be Excelsior-style ships. Should be Ambassador-style ships, like the Enterprise C. You should be pulling ships from that time period out of mothballs, not Discovery-style ships. Those ships should be gone right now. They should be recycled in the trash can. Also, we have to assume this, that they can build starships much faster now in the future. They should be able to actually build purpose-built starships for transporting really fast and really easy. Remember the Sona in Star Trek Insurrection? They built that holographic ship that was going to carry off the people off, what were they called? The Baku. Was that their name? Remember, they were going to transport all the people off that planet by having this holographic ship that inside you could make it all holographic and stick a lot of people in there. And it was a transport ship for transporting people. They made that real fast. Why can't they make something like that again? People are forgetting that that kind of ship exists. They got the blueprints. They can make that. They can put something together like that. They can also put shuttles together real fast. People always say, what about all the shuttles on Voyager? How did they get new shuttles? They built them, obviously. They built the freaking Delta Flyer in 1 week on Voyager. 1 week they built the Delta Flyer from ground up. So with all the resources of Utopia Planitia and Earth, they should be able to build shuttles and ships extremely fast in the late 24th century. So there's no need to take a 150-year-old ship that can barely run and is based on way older technology, even older than the original series technology. Remember, before the original series, before TOS ships, before the Excelsior-style ships, there's no reason they would take ships like that old, and use them as even just transport ships. They just wouldn't stand up. It's just too old. There's that time period between Kirk and Picard, and a ton of ships between that time period. Mid to late 23rd century, and then early 24th century. If you're going to pull a ship from mothballs, you're going to go to the early 24th, 100 years old ship. Sure, I can buy that. That would be early 24th century. But going back way further than that makes no sense. Even further than that. I mean, it's just not the right thing. And so, but the reason why it's there, and the reason why they're doing that, is they're trying to force the Discovery aesthetic on us. They're trying to say Discovery is canon, it's prime timeline. You guys are all jerks, and we're gonna say it's that Discovery is relevant by putting ships in the Picard era. That's what they're doing, and it's a total middle finger to the fans. Total middle finger. They're shoving it down our throat and making it something that it isn't. And then, of course, you got the 150-year-old school bus that's a Discovery shuttle. Why would they be using a Discovery shuttle as a civilian transport? They have a ton of different kinds of shuttles that are 24th century design that they have. Ton of them. And they can build shuttles like nothing. They're easy to build for the Federation, especially with the whole, Earth and Utopia Planitia being right there. If they can build the Delta Flyer in 1 week on Voyager, they can pound a shuttle out pretty quick. There is just no reason that they would be running shuttles that old as civilian transports. Now, that whole short would have been fine as a Discovery era short, if not had they had Picard show up there at the end. He showed up at the end on the screen, so that brings us right to the Picard era. And that worries me for Star Trek Picard. It worries me greatly. That stuff should not be there. Period. I don't care what excuse you come up with for why there's Discovery ships in Picard. There should not be. I will never buy that there should be, and I will never buy that it makes sense. I just won't, because it doesn't. So you want my opinion on it? That's how I feel. I'm very, very sharp about this as a fan, because I have seen it grow and change over the years. Enterprise was really the start of it all. Now, that said, in hindsight, Enterprise is a good series. I highly, highly recommend you watch it. I did enjoy it. I was not one of those people that dissed Enterprise. I liked it. I liked where they went, except for the Xindi arc and Temporal Cold War. Yeah, the Nazi space vampires was weird, but the rest of it was okay. What happened was they got a little too, they went a little too far over the line. But they brought it back when Manny Cotto came on in the last season of Enterprise. He came on and set the course right on Enterprise. We started getting episodes we should have been getting all along. Problem is, they had the writing was already on the wall for the series, and they were not going to give it another season. And it's unfortunate, because I think that could have been the turning point where Enterprise actually started getting like 7 or 8 seasons, at least as much as TNG. I think it could have got to 7 seasons. I think it could have, if if they had just given it one more season to prove itself, because Manny Cotto was doing wonderful things in that last season of Enterprise. Wonderful, wonderful things. And he was going to do more Mirror Universe episodes. We were going to get that in the next season. We were going to get more Mirror Universe episodes, which were extremely popular. Everyone loved those Mirror Universe episodes. And so it's unfortunate that the writing was already on the wall and they were going to shut it down and not give it another chance, because I think it could have had a big turning point there. So in hindsight, I actually liked Enterprise. I watched it a lot. I was part of a forum back in the day during that called Trek BBS. And what we would do is start these running commentary threads. So the show would come on, you start a running commentary thread, and everybody would start posting, what they were watching. It was like we'd watch something on the screen and be like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that?" And we'd go to the forum and post that. "Did you see that? He's talking about this, blah blah blah." And it was a live running commentary thread of the show as we were all watching it live. That was so exciting. And then we would have a review thread where we would review the episode and talk about it and give our thoughts. And boy, those got so long. I mean, and there was a lot of debate, good or bad. Some people hated the show. Some people loved the show. Some people were neutral. Just like it is today, really. But it was fun. It was fun. It was a fun period in Star Trek. And that's really where social media started affecting Star Trek and stuff. Because a lot of stuff was in social media public on the internet for the first time about a Star Trek TV show that was live currently. So that's kind of where it all started with Enterprise. Now, it really went off the rails with the J.J. Abrams. Yeah, he did something crazy there. And everybody gets it. Everybody knows that, that was his Star Wars audition. J.J. Abrams wanted Star Wars. And Star Trek, he used Star Trek. He used it. He used it as his gateway to doing Star Wars. That's what it was for him. And that means it got abused along the way. It was all action, very shallow. The story and nuance of Star Trek was lost, and it was just an action movie. Now, it was a fun action movie, and let me tell you, I did enjoy it. I went to the theater to see the first movie probably about 20 times, no joke. I loved it. But I did see, as it kept going on, how not Star Trek it was. But it was still entertaining for being in the movies. I could separate the two. I could say, okay, Star Trek is what I know on the TV, and this is in the movies, so this is different. And I could separate the two universes and in my mind say, all right, it's a different universe. Which it really was, because of the way the time travel and stuff worked. It actually did create a new universe. So I could buy that. And I was like, all right, cool, I buy it. And then Discovery happened. I remember the build up to that, though. There was so much talk about what that show was actually going to be. And so many people got it wrong. But then it came out, and boy, was it just trying too hard. Trying too hard to make it seem like it's Star Trek. They wanted to force it down our throat that it is Star Trek, even though it doesn't look like it. And that's just where we are now, That's just where we are now. Will I watch the next season of Discovery? Yes. Will I watch Picard series? Yes. And we'll just see where it goes. I'm either going to like it or not like it. But I'm going to watch it because I need to know what's going on as a fan. I want to know. I want to know where Star Trek's headed. And if this is really it, it's sad. We were all hoping Picard would be the savior for Star Trek because this is Patrick Stewart we're talking about. Surely he would not let this go down the same tubes as Discovery. Surely he would know what needs to be right to make it feel like Star Trek. But now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. And that worries me greatly. Really, really worries me. Everyone was hoping Picard was going to save Star Trek. And it looks like the networks are bigger than the actors here. They really have all the power. And it's a shame. It is such a shame. So I don't know where it's all headed. We're in this transitional period. People are going to look back 10 years from now. People are going to look back on this and we'll have a different view. Either it won't be such a big deal and people will be okay with the changes, or it'll be like this is the turning point where all the fans left Star Trek and went somewhere else, you know, and new fans came on and they're the new Star Trek fans, the new Trek or whatever. This could be that turning point, but only time will tell. Hindsight. We'll have to wait to see how this all really plays out, because I don't know where it's headed. I'm going to keep watching, but I would love to see real Star Trek once again. I would love to see a post-Nemesis series, a 26th, let's just say 26th century. That would be a real interesting time for Star Trek, because there would be time travel involved now. There would be, you know, the start of time ships and that kind of thing, and it could be interesting, you know, having to manage people time traveling and stuff. Not necessarily a show based on like Time Cops or something like that, but there would be, you know, things happening in the background. I don't know, but the 26th century could be a real interesting point to do stuff, because it would be the future and it would be more accepted, especially with the technology being real wild and all that. It would just look better in the future. Anyway, those are some of my opinions. You may agree with me. You may disagree with me. I would love to hear your comments below, but that is how I feel about the current Trek, and I just wanted to let you know I've seen everything, and I'm going to continue to watch everything. And if I can get around to it, I will do some specific reviews of things. And so generally I'm optimistic, but at the same time I'm realistic. I see what they're trying to shove down our throats, and what I've seen already in Picard makes me question where that's going to be headed. However, I'm intrigued by the next season of Discovery, the fact that it's going to be in the future. Far in the future, farther than we've ever gone. That means they can do things there that they couldn't do before. So that I am interested in. And we'll just see where Picard goes. I hope it doesn't turn into a political rant. That's one of my other worst nightmares, is that they use it to do some kind of political rant and or wokeness rant, and it starts turning into the latest season of the Doctor Who. Because let me tell you, I stopped watching Doctor Who after Capaldi left. The end of Doctor Who for me was when Capaldi left as the Doctor. Now I could go into a whole nother video about that, so I will not do that right now. But I hope Star Trek does not turn into a woke political message. That's all. But we'll see. So thank you for watching. Leave your comments below and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video. Check out Twitter at Brent_Justice for updates. You can follow me there. Also, check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/Brent Justice. This helps support the channel and also allows me to publish more and more videos.